and welcome to episode number 15 of The Board Crew, TBC. I'm your host, Ben.
Hey, and this is Hocky. G'day.
All right. Well, this episode we're going to look at free games. We're going to look at Roll Through the Ages.
Mm-hmm. And another role player, R-O-L-L, not R-O-L-E.
And while we're on a roll, we're looking at Pandemic the Cure. Sorry.
There is rolling involved, trust us.
There is a theme that will come through, but let's roll on into it. Our first game that we're talking about is Roll Through the Ages. This is by Matt Leacock of Pandemic fame. Probably his biggest hit, I'd say.
Yeah, very big.
He's done a lot of great games, including, I think he just did Daybreak.
Oh, could have. He's
I
very
haven't
well
played
known.
that yet. I'm keen.
Very well known for his co-op games, I think.
Yeah, lots of co-op games. This one is not co-op though.
No.
This is a roll and write. You're going to be rolling these big chunky wooden dice, and you're going to have a big wooden board each as well. It's a bit like a cribbage board, if you've ever played crib, where you get to like move little plastic pegs in drilled in holes to sort of mark how much of each resource you've got. Aside from your big wooden board with the plastic pegs on it, you've also got a sheet with a number of squares and sort of text that you can sign off on, little cities and stuff like that. Essentially, when you roll the dice, they're going to come up with a various number of symbols on them. So you might get people, which you can use to fill in either building new cities or building monuments. You can get wheat, which you need to feed your cities. Yeah, I'll get back to that in a minute. You can get goods, which you use to collect goods. They'll go on your little pegboard that you're getting. And then you can get skulls, which are generally bad.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, there's one other thing. You can get a coin, which you can use to spend straight away for technologies. So people are really easy. You're just using them to fill in squares. You can either use them to fill in a city, and every city that you fill in gets you another dice to roll in future rounds, which is great because the more dice you roll, more stuff you can roll.
It is. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yay, more people.
Yeah, no downside whatsoever.
Except...
You can also use the people to fill in monuments. Monuments are one of the game end triggers. Once all the different monuments have been built, the game will end. And you can build a monument that someone else has already completed, but obviously that's not very impressive.
Yeah.
I build the pyramids and then Hockey comes along and he's like, I also built a pyramid. Everyone's like, no one cares.
Yeah.
You do get some points, but not many. So monuments are generally a race of how many can you build. And there's nothing worse than looking across the table and realizing that someone else has started the same monument that you're halfway through.
Yes.
And just going, I've got to like pour everything into this now.
That's it. I know. And you're just going, oh, yeah, I'm just about to finish that. And they've done a really lucky roll. And
they've got more cities. And so they're rolling more dice.
Yeah.
And you're just like, they're getting so many more than me. The downside of cities, though, is for every city that you have to feed one wheat to that city.
Yes.
Now, you can store wheat. You can store like up to 10, which isn't that many given you start with 3 cities. And you can get all the way up to 6 cities, which is
7.
7 cities, which you can't even store more than a turn worth of food. And so quite often you'll see people with lots of cities just frantically re-rolling those dice to try and get the wheat.
Yeah.
to not starve.
It's bad if they start. Well,
I mean,
not
you only
bad,
lose a point
but
for every wheat.
Yeah.
It's not game breaking.
Not
you
game
can definitely starve and win, but
Yeah.
you can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And win.
You do need to focus on it, but it's not game ending if you don't.
Yeah. The goods are pretty interesting in the sense that if you get one good, it's just like you get a stick.
Yeah.
If you get 2 goods, you get a stick and a rock. If you get 3 goods, you get a stick, a rock, and an urn. And then you get a stick, a rock, and a cloth, and then a stick, a rock, and a...
Yeah.
I can't remember what the last one
So
is,
the
but something
scales
great.
up.
They get better and better the more goods that you get. But if you just keep each turn rolling like one good, you just keep getting more sticks, which are really not worth that much. And so when you're selling them for money, it's hopeless. So that's another reason why it encourages you to kind of go for more cities.
Yeah. Just push that a little bit further so you got the better resource for later on.
Yeah.
So.
Now the game uses a basic Yahtzee mechanic. So you roll your dice, you can put some aside, you can re-roll the other ones, put some aside, keep going. The one rule is you can't re-roll anything that comes up with a skull.
Yes.
One skull, no one cares. Two skulls means you got a drought, which is not great.
Yeah, this skull mechanic is fun.
Yep.
So.
The great thing is, one skull does nothing to you. Two skulls is bad for you. Three skulls is bad for everyone else, not you.
I think that's hilarious.
But then four skulls is terrible for you. And then five skulls is bad for everybody.
It just sort of and it can be. I've only played this game once, and I managed to roll 3 skulls, and you just see that everyone at the table go, "Oh."
I've had so many games where someone's rolled the 3 skulls and then gone, I'm just going to re-roll this other one because like I need a wheat or something, and then gone 4 skulls, and suddenly it's just come back to them. So it is really great to see people kind of do that bit of push their luck with those skulls. You don't have to keep re-rolling. You can stop.
You can stop. Yes.
But you might not have what you want. So people will risk those skulls.
That's it.
The other thing that you can use goods and the coins that I spoke about earlier is buying technologies.
Yes.
And technologies are like special abilities that you get in the game. Maybe you can ignore some of the skull things.
Yeah.
These don't hurt you anymore. Maybe you can mean that every time you roll like a worker, you get an extra worker. Every time you roll a food, you get an extra food. You can sell certain goods for more. Lots of cool stuff about some of the techs. And that's another game end trigger of once someone's bought X number of techs, depending on the number of players, etc., you get
the game ends.
Game ends. So it's either the monuments or the techs. Game will end. Count up your points. And each tech is worth some points as well.
Yeah, the tech makes it mitigates some of those issues that you have, but it also adds to the resources that you can get. So, I've created some fields. Now, whenever I roll wheat, I get extra wheat. Yay! So it makes those cities a bit more inviting to try and get. Yeah. As well as, I think there's ones there that can help you build the monuments better.
Yep.
And helps get rid of, or at least mitigates these disasters that can happen.
Yeah.
From
And
the skulls.
they can make you immune to some of the skull ones, which can be really great, but they tend to be worth less points to get. But if you're really worried about other people rolling skulls or you rolling skulls, it can be a great option.
That's it. Yeah. It's really clever in that regards. It's very simple to understand. Once you sort of play that and you look at it, all the little developments that they've got do make sense. You go, oh, okay, yeah, that'll help me with this, or I get one worker, or I get one more good. The one thing I did find interesting was about the goods themselves. So like the sticks and the urns and such. If you spend it, you have to spend the whole lot.
Yeah,
that is a bit odd when you think about it. Going, oh, I'm just buying that thing for one resource, but I have to spend all my resource to get it.
Yeah.
So you got to do that calculation in your head, just going, oh, is it worth me spending that? Do I just not and maybe buy something more expensive, drop that down, and then buy it in the next round when I'm just going, I've only got 1 or 2 of it. That was interesting.
And then there's only so many goods you can hold. There's a tech that lets you hold more, but that's also quite a limiting factor. So even if you can collect lots of sticks, you're only allowed to hold so many sticks before you have to start selling them for something terrible.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing. It plays 1 to 4 players. I've never played it at 1. We'll probably have to ask Daniel at some point to give it a solo.
Solo dance.
I think it plays equally well 2 to 4 because it doesn't take long for someone's turn.
No, and I think the thing is too is that yes, you can roll the skulls, which may affect the other people, and building the monuments
is a race.
Yeah, is a race. But in that aspect, anything else, you're kind of playing your own game.
Yeah.
So if you increase the people, there might be someone's going to build that before me, or whatever else. But it's not intrusive. You're just going, I'm just going to do this, and hopefully you'll be able to do it now if you roll well enough. So
Yeah,
I like
I think
that.
the higher player counts just make you focus a little bit more
Yeah.
because you're a little bit more worried about other people's skulls or you're more worried about getting that monument. So I can't just stuff around getting that tech. I've got to build that Great Wall because Hockey's halfway through it. And
That's it.
There's only
He's
so many
catching.
monuments to go around. I've got to get this one. The box says it's 30 to 45 minutes. Honestly, I think it errs towards the 30-minute side most of the time. It's a pretty quick game.
That's it. And it's you're just rolling dice. You can move on pretty quickly. So I found that very... we played it that first one time, maybe 40 minutes for the first time, and it was all of us new players except for Ben. And yeah, we all understood it pretty quickly. Couple of rounds and you're flying through it easily.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So I really like Roll for the Ages.
So I'm going to talk about Role Player, made in 2016 by... Now, his name is a little tricky to pronounce.
First name's easy.
Yeah.
Keith.
Keith. But his second name's Mateka or Matataja? I'm not quite sure. Sorry, Keith. I apologize. I'm butchering your name. Now, Ben, you've played D&D, correctly?
Once. Yeah. I've won one campaign.
Yeah.
Essentially. So.
Did you make your own character in that game?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Did you enjoy making your character?
Yeah, it was lots of fun.
Well, this game is about making characters. That essentially is the game. So you are building it's not D&D, but you're building a D&D character. You'll have your race, human or an elf or dwarf, and you will collect dice to place that onto your board and build up your character with that. So you'll have also your stats with you'll have your class, you'll have your alignment, you'll have your backstory. All these things will add towards building up your character. The way that you build your character is that it is a drafting of dice. So there'll be a set of dice in the middle of the table, and you will choose one of those dice, take it, and add that dice. Whatever it rolled up, it goes in a particular order, but you'll add that to your character, say in strength or dexterity, all the stats that you normally have, and add that to your dice. One of the benefits too is the stats that you have will give you other little powers to use on your board. But essentially, that's all you're really doing is creating this character. Once everyone's chosen their dice, we do go into a second phase, which is the market. You can buy armor. The armor is, you're just collecting sets of armor. Swords and axes help you. The swords and all weapons, they all just help you manipulate things on your board as you're going. And then you can collect certain things that will give you points at the end of the game. That's essentially the game. You'll go until you've filled out all your stats. There's 6 stats with 3 dice in each. Now, I love this game. I think it's so much fun. I kickstarted this, and I don't kickstart many games. But this one, I saw the mechanics, and it just grasped me straight away. The dice actually have different colors, so they can actually mean something different too. You've got, obviously, the pips of the dice mean something, and you're trying to get, say, your strength, you needed to get it between 14 and 16 or over 18.
So is that based on like your race and your class? That's what those bits do? They say these are the dice that you need to get, or are they...
That's correct. Your class actually tells you. So your class has the number that you're trying to reach with it. Mm-hmm. Your background will tell you the color of dice that you want to place in certain places on your board.
Yep.
And so they determined, you're there going, I want this blue dice, but I don't want to put it in this spot, or I don't want this number on it. And so that leads to some issues with the game that I find. Analysis paralysis galore in this game.
I know a couple of people I won't play this with.
Yes. It is a lot of analysis. So you're trying to figure out which dice I want to get, Then once you get that dice, you got to figure out where you're going to put it on your board. Once you've figured out that, you'll get a power from putting it on your board. How am I going to use that power? After all that's said and done, then you got to the market part where you're going, I want to buy this, but maybe I want this. Have I got the coins to buy this? Because there is a coin to be able to buy these cards as well. And you're going, oh, okay, I want to buy this one. So it does have a lot of just trying to think, do I need this? Do I want this? How do I use this? Can I buy this get this cheap dice, this simple dice now? And can I manipulate it later on in the game? And so there's a lot of that going on because certain powers might allow you, if you had a 1, you might be able to flip it over into a 6 to the opposite side or re-roll it. So you're really trying to just go, can I get the most out of this? And it's very tricky to do.
I often with those dice ones, you get the first couple that really work well, and then your plan kind of starts falling over as you need more and more exact.
Yeah,
this is what I need.
Oh, exactly.
So this sounds a little bit like Sagrada. Have you played that one?
I have not played.
Because it's like rolling dice with colours, except in that case, it's more Azul-like. I guess you're placing patterns of the dice. So, this spot needs to be a 5. It doesn't matter what colour. This one needs to be a blue.
Is that the window pane one?
Yeah.
Oh, I have played that, yes. Yeah, no.
So,
yes, think of that game, but just with that theme of D&D. It actually fits that theme pretty cool. I really like that idea of it. But yeah, if you're thinking about that game where you have to place your dice in, they had certain rules, but where you can't break the window, to speak, as you're building it.
Yeah.
This one, you're just building. You can choose where it goes on your board, but it always starts at the left-hand side. You have to build towards.
Well, I mean, it's very old school D&D, like roll for stats.
Roll for stats, exactly. So, but with that drafting mechanic, so the drafting does make you choose the initiative order for when you're buying. So there's a lot of that trying to play with. So yes, I want to get this number 6 dice, but then I'll be last in the buying part, and I'm going, I really want this. When I buy, someone else probably wants that too. So it does really play with your brain, but just that theme coming through of just going, I've got my dwarf. And that I do sort of forget the theme, I will admit, because I'm really just going, can I get that 18? Do I need that dice? And to me, I really enjoy that intensity of just trying to go, can I get that dice? Can I get these numbers? Can I get the colors in order? And I tend to focus on the colors a lot more than anything, because for some reason that just works out well for me.
Who needs stats when you got a backstory? Right?
Oh, of course, exactly. There is an alignment as mechanic as well. It's kind of weird, but you're just moving this cube around, and at the end of the game, wherever it lands on in this 9x9 grid, you'll get the points under it. Could be positive, could be negative, could be nothing. That's pretty much the essentials of the game. There are expansions for it, which add new mechanics to it, like fighting monsters, which is a little bit of fun too. Adds a whole new set of dice. Instead of going to the market, you can go fight monsters. And then there's the latest expansion has these minions and just adds another area where you can put dice to on your board. Yeah, I think it's for what it is. And like Keith creating this company, this was their second game from the company, but this game has spurred on a whole universe that they've created. Cartographer is one of his.
Yep.
But they've got Lockup is another one. It's all set in the universe, and they've now got maybe 10 or so games set in their role player universe. So this was a launching point for that game, for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this game did very well.
So, yeah, it did. And as I got the Kickstarter, I got the gold coins, the metal coins to come with it. Yeah, I really like this game. I know you haven't played it yet, Ben. So
no, so I can't comment other than I want to play.
Yeah, yes. Does it sound interesting to you with that dice mechanic type stuff?
Yeah. I'm in for giving it a go. I remember playing like on my old Apple IIe, like the Bard's Tale, where you just sat hitting reroll on the stats until you got like 1018.
Got the right thing.
So I was like, yes, I'm going in.
Yes.
So I'm sure I won't manage to get that in role player, but
No.
That's kind of. I love rolling for stats. So let's go.
And it is. It's kind of fun to do that too. It's by Thunderworks Games, and if you like that game, you might like some of their other games as well.
That was
Role Player.
Okay, the last game we're talking about is Pandemic the Cure. Mm-hmm. Or really, it could be called Pandemic Roll. Or Roll Pandemic.
Yeah.
As it says on the box, it's an extra strength dice game, fast acting. This is also by Matt Leacock of Pandemic fame. This is his kind of Pandemic the Dice game follow-up. So Pandemic the Cure is for 2 to 5 players and plays in about half an hour. Oh. It's a co-op game, and so you're going to be rolling dice that will come up with different numbers. You're going to have 6 discs around a circle, and whatever number the dice comes up is which disc it goes on. And the 6 discs represent 6 areas of the world. Yeah. And it has the same, if you play Pandemic, if you get too many dice, or like from Pandemic, too many cubes on one spot, that causes an outbreak, which then spreads to neighboring areas. So many outbreaks, you die. Or in this case, if you run out of dice to pull from the bag, you also die. Yep. Each dice has a color representing one of the 4 diseases from Pandemic. And those dice, even though they look like normal 6-sided dice, they'll have repeated numbers on them. So maybe the black can only roll 1s, 4s, and 5s. There's no 2s and 6s on the black. But reds roll 2, 4s, and 6s. And so on each location where dice can go, there's a bit of a graph that shows you how many of each of those numbers are on each dice. So you can see kind of the risks coming for you. Very similar to Pandemic, you're going to be walking around curing those dice, except when you cure dice in Pandemic the Cure, you don't just put them back in the supply, you place them in front of the player as samples. So instead of collecting cards, you're collecting the dice as samples. And to cure a disease, you need so many colors, so many of that color. You know. Similar to Pandemic, if you've played that, everyone gets a roll with some special ability. On your turn, you actually roll dice to see what you can do. Yes. And those dice have mostly good things. So maybe it's a syringe, so that lets you treat other dice. Maybe it's a boat that lets you move to the nearest one thing. Maybe it's a plane that lets you fly to any other spot. Yeah. Maybe it's a cure marker. So you have to use those to actually cure the disease. And so every roll actually comes with their own set of dice with different distributions of them. So if you've got the medic, you're going to roll lots of those syringes that let you cure really easily. That's it. Exactly. Whereas if you're the scientist, you get lots of the cure ones. And depending on the character, you might have more dice than other people as well. Yeah. Generally, it's, I think, 4 dice, but you might have 5 dice with another thing. The interesting thing is when you swap some of the cure's samples, you actually give the person your dice that's holding that cure sample on. And so I have to give one of my dice to Hocky so that he can get 4 yellows ready to cure. But then I don't get a die for a whole round. That's it. It's stored away. It's out being used. And that's the same on yourself too. It's being held. So you might be down to 2 dice and just going, I can't do much this turn with these 2 dice. Pandemic the Cure uses the Yahtzee mechanic where you get to re-roll dice. But again, there's a bad side of the dice. There's the infection side of the dice. Yes. When you roll that, you've got to draw more dice out of the bag and put them into the center pool, which then sort of each time at the end of your turn, you've got to roll all those dice in the center pool and they'll go out to terrible spots. Jeez, Matt. What are you doing with this? All these bad sides on the dice, I tell you. Yeah, it'd be so much easier without it. Look, I actually really quite like Pandemic the Cure. I think I prefer Pandemic. Oh, of course. Out of the 2. And most people that I've talked to when they've played Pandemic and the Cure,
they all say, no, Pandemic's a better game. But Pandemic is a big game. Like, it can take a while. It can be quite, full on. Whereas this, half an hour?
Yeah, half an hour. And I reckon that includes setup and pack up. It's really quick to set up.
Yeah.
And it's really quick to pack up, as opposed to Pandemic, which is a little bit of effort to kind of get in. It also is actually really cool that they put some effort in and everyone gets their own set of dice. There's 7 different roles in the game, and all of those roles have their own unique set of dice with different abilities, and some of them have their own special side that no one else has that side.
That's true.
On there, which is just really good. The disadvantage of it, I think, is it feels a bit more random than Pandemic.
Oh, very much so.
Sometimes, like, you can have games of Pandemic where you're like, well, it wouldn't have mattered what we did, we were going to lose. Pandemic The Cure can really, like, in that half an hour, you can just go from, we've almost got this, to, wow, that in those 2 turns we lost.
That's it. So, you're drawing them out the bag. You don't know what color you're going to draw out of the bag, and then you've got to roll all the dice, so you don't know what's going to happen with that too.
Yeah.
Whereas with Pandemic, you kind of can get an idea of what's going to be coming up. If you can,
the advantage of a deck of cards is a predictability, and the fact that every time you take out like a particular city, well, that city's out, and it's there, and the epidemics just increase how often that card's going to come through circulation. But you'll know in Pandemic, Sydney's going to be our hotspot.
Yeah.
So in The Cure, because you're just putting dice in and out of a bag and in and out of the center pool that they get rolled from, you could randomly draw 6 black dice and no red ones.
Yeah.
And you had no cure over that. And just the fact that you drew 6 black this turn doesn't really change whether you're going to draw 6 black next turn.
Yeah, there is
apart
limited
from
number
that
of dice.
there's only so many dice in the bag.
But it's still, you don't know. But just going, okay, we could probably guess that there's maybe 2 or 3 black dice left in the bag. But we might, we just drew those 6 ones again. Oh, great.
There is similar to Pandemic, which has like the special event cards. There are cards that you can buy and that give you a special ability. They're called event cards as well, but they'll take a certain side of dice that you can buy and use those to then, well, we don't have to do an infection phase this turn, or we can teleport this person to here, or whatever it is, or you get to re-roll an infection marker.
Yeah.
So they're quite nice, and it's a nice little sort of workaround. I think Pandemic The Cure feels a little bit more cooperative than Pandemic because 2 reasons. One, it's harder to alpha game because I don't know what you're going to roll.
Yes.
And I can't math out, Hockey, you should do this.
That's
I can go, I don't know that I'd risk it, but you get to choose whether to risk to re-roll to get that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, because you've got to give each other dice and you really have to, if you're going to win Pandemic The Cure, you really do have to work really well together.
Yeah.
And sacrifice some of your own turn so that the other person gets a better turn next turn.
Yep.
Which in Pandemic, it's much more like, well, we've got a game plan, and if we all stick to the plan, we might get through this. It's not guaranteed.
Not guaranteed.
But Pandemic is much more math it out, kind of plan it out. Hockey, you deal with these. Jenny, you cure red. You know, Ben, you're going to go down and start working on black. And Daniel, if you make sure Europe's under control and hold that card until we need it.
Exactly. Yeah. The benefit too is, yes, we've only got 6 locations, whereas Pandemic, you've got, I don't know, 30 places that you can go to.
It's a whole world.
It's a whole world.
I mean, technically it's a whole world in Pandemic The Cure too.
Yeah. But you
Yeah.
can, it's not as spread out, you could say. Yes, the dice will explode and move on around, but you've only got 6 locations and you can, it's harder to get it across to the other side, but, you can do it. Whereas in Pandemic, I'm going, I need to get from London to Sydney, and if I don't fly, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It can take a long time.
Which means you tend to get much more separated in Pandemic, dealing with your own area.
Yeah.
In The Cure, you're really all working on the whole board
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, you're close by. And if you need to give, I think you have to be in the same location to give someone your dice to use. So you go, well, if I can jump one over, and if you jump one over, then we can exchange dice. So it's you're closer. Where Pandemic
and working out when to exchange dice too, because like if I exchange it now, you can do something on your turn, and I'll get my dice back.
Yes.
If we exchange it on your turn, then I've got a whole turn without the die.
Yep.
And so trying to work out those optimal times, but your die are locked as soon as you put those samples on the dice as well. Sometimes you're holding onto a sample just hoping that you can, and then you're like, oh, guys, we're not going to cure black anytime soon. Let's put that back in.
Yep. Just so I can get that dice back to use it for something that's
which can be
worthwhile.
Painful as well. So,
but I really like that aspect of it. It's again shorter, tighter. You can play this in a lunchtime. I think this game is a little easier to win. I
just think it's more random.
It is definitely more random. I feel like I've won this game a little more often than probably normal Pandemic. But that's just, maybe I'm just being lucky. So
yeah, I think for me, I can beat easy and moderate levels of Pandemic much more consistently than I can the Cure. But I think Pandemic rewards more repeat plays than the Cure does. So at some point you get better at Pandemic. You will get better at the Cure. There's important decisions to make, but at the end of the day, you're playing for 30 minutes, so I don't mind the luck.
That's it.
You're not going to feel that ripped off. You feel really ripped off in Pandemic if you lose turn 2 or something, because you're like, we just spent like 15 minutes setting this up.
Yes.
Do you want to re-go?
Yeah.
In the Cure, if you lose quickly, you're like, oh well, like
just
5 seconds,
again.
let's go again.
Let's do it again. Yeah. There is an expansion for this game too.
Is there? I didn't know that.
There is, and it adds in the same with the first expansion for Pandemic.
Oh, the virulent strain.
The virulent strain, the purple dice. So it's basically similar to the first expansion for Pandemic, that the virulent dice there causes chaos.
Yeah.
So you've got to deal with that separately rather than like the others. So you're trying to cure it as well as the original one. So there's different rules for that. And of course it adds new characters. It's not too bad, that expansion. So it's a good change up to this game. Does make it harder though.
Fair enough. Well, if you want even more chaos and harder, then that's something to add. So that's Pandemic: The Cure. Okay, so we've talked about Roll Through the Ages.
We've talked about Role Player.
And Pandemic: The Cure.
All dice rolling games for your rolling pleasure. If you love the sound of the clinky dice together, these are the 3 games for you.
That's 100% right. And all of these, well, actually, no, I'm not sure about Role Player, but Roll Through the Ages and Pandemic: The Cure have custom dice.
Not so much so with Role Player. They do use standard 6 dice, but there are different colors. So.
Yeah, well, that looks cool. And are they like clear or solid?
They're all opaque, so all of in the standard game at least, 100. It feels like 100 dice in there. So yeah, all dice games and all kind of different in their own way. You've got a co-op game with the Cure and
basically a roll and write.
Yeah, roll and write, and then
dice placement.
Yeah, dice placement drafting games. So so they're all different.
Yeah, they're all slightly older games, so you probably find them easily in secondhand areas and stuff. I'm not sure. Role Player is probably still getting published, but
it is still. You can still buy that brand new if you wanted to. It's 8 years old now, as of this recording, but the company's still going strong, as it's their maiden game.
Yeah,
it's their biggest one. So
you can definitely get Through the Ages and Pandemic, both of which are the bigger versions of those things. Through the Ages feels nothing like Roll Through the Ages, so your mileage may vary with that. I like Through the Ages as well, but it's a completely different beast. Pandemic: The Cure and Pandemic, definitely the theme and some of the mechanics fit, but they do feel fairly different games.
They do feel different. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's got that same overall, stuff's happening, we've got to solve it. But the way that it does that, it's totally different. If you've played any of other games by Matt Lee,
He does like his cooperative, let's fight a crisis that gets worse every time you've had a turn.
Exactly. Like by his Forbidden series, all those games they're fairly different.
Well, thanks very much for joining us for episode 15. We look forward to getting bored with you next time.
Cheers.
Bye.
This has been another episode of The Board Crew. Thanks for listening. Join the conversation by rolling over to our socials. Just search The Board Crew on Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'm saying puns. Sunk into the lows.
Yeah.